All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to my new series on my YouTube channel. It's going to be the fantasy football team by team review. I'm going to go through each team in the NFL. I'm going to do two videos a day over the next 15 days to try to get all these videos out for you guys before the preseason, so you guys could have a better idea of what you guys want to do when you draft. Um, yeah, so let's get right into it. So we're going to start off in the NFC North with the Detroit Lions. Uh, the Detroit Lions, they were in 2016. They were 9-7. I think that was second in the NFC North. In 2016, they scored a total of 346 points, or 21.6 points per game, which was good for around 20th of the 32 NFL teams. And their defense gave up 358 points, which is good for around 13th of the 32 NFL teams. Now, you might see that number and say, "Whoa, the Detroit Lions were solid defensively." Not really. What the Lions did last year was they really slowed down their pace. Under Jim Bob Cooter, they really just quick passes, slowed it down. They took like pretty much what Dallas did. They took up like 8 minute, 7 minute, 9 minute drives, and that really allowed the defense to not be on the field as long. And so that's the reason why the Lions defense gave up only 358 points. It's not that they were spectacular. It was just more that they weren't on the field enough. Moving on, here's their fantasy depth chart. We got Matt Stafford at QB, Jake Rudolph, Brad Kaya. The other two guys at quarterback are really irrelevant this season. Um, Running backs, Amir Abdullah, Theo Riddick, Zach Zenner, Dwayne Washington. At wide receiver, Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, Kenny Galladay, TJ Jones, and Jared Abbrederis. And at tight end, Eric Ebron, Darren Fells, and Michael Roberts. So let's get right into it. At quarterbacks, we got Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford has always been one of my favorite quarterbacks. And in fantasy, he's been one of the favorite quarterbacks for a while. It's because he throws the ball a ton. They used to have him just throw it up to Calvin Johnson. He would get tons of yards, tons of TDs. However, under Jim Bob Cooter's new offensive scheme, uh, it it was a lot more quick passes, quick screens, quick slants, stuff like that. So Matthew Stafford got rid of the ball quickly. They did short yards, just down the field, or moved the chains down the field, took long drives, and because of that, Matthew Stafford had a good season in terms of like real life, but in fantasy, he kind of took a step backwards. He wasn't getting the absurd amount of TDs and yards that we were accustomed to seeing Matthew Stafford put up, and instead it was just everything kind of fell down a little bit. And yeah, so Matthew Stafford is currently being drafted around as the 14th quarterback. Excuse me. And I have him ranked as 22nd, actually. I think he's going to regress slightly because Amir Abdullah is returning. I'm also, when drafting, I'll go over this in my draft video where I kind of break down my strategies, etc. But I really am against drafting two quarterbacks. I don't see there's a point in it. But I know there are some two quarterback leagues and there are some dynasty leagues and stuff like that. So if you wanted to draft Matt Stafford, he's a late round pick and he's nothing more than a QB2, but they're clearly better options in my opinion. Um, yeah, so that's about it for Matthew Stafford. QB2, nothing really more. Amir Abdullah's return should kind of maybe they run in a few more TDs, but that's about it for Matthew Stafford. Let's get to the running backs and let's get right into Amir Abdullah. I know it's a lot to read. I'm gonna try to go over it, but like you guys can pause it and read it if you want. Um, Abdullah only played 2 games last season, but he was really solid, and now he's fully healthy and he's expected to take over the Lions' backfield again. Abdullah was rated as one of the most elusive running backs in 2016. I think he broke a lot of tackles, or he forced a lot of missed tackles before he went down with an injury. And Taylor Decker is currently injured. Keep your eye on that. But the Lions upgraded their offensive line by adding T.J. Lang and Ricky Wagner, both of which should benefit not only Abdullah but also Matt Stafford. The Lions haven't had a running back with over 200 carries in a while, but I think Abdullah does that this season. I think he does carry over 200 times. Um, According to Fantasy Pros, Amir Abdullah is being currently drafted as the 26th running back. I have him much higher at around 28. I think he's going to be a really big bounce back candidate. I think Abdullah can really have a big season. Not, of course, to the level of like Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson, etc., or Jay Ajayi or Devontae Freeman, but I think he has some solid RB. He's going to be a solid RB2 with maybe RB1 upside. And if he's being drafted as the 26th running back, that's around RB3 in 12-team leagues. That's RB3 right there. So he's going very undervalued. He's being very undervalued, I guess. And I think you should draft him much higher above some other guys. Um, I don't really have off the top of my head. I'm still working on my rankings, but I have Abdullah as around 18. And that's about it, guys. I really like Amir Abdullah, so let's move on to the other running back in Theo Riddick. Theo Riddick ran the ball 92 times for 357 yards and hauled in 53 receptions for 371 yards. He had a total of 6 TDs. One was rushing, 5 was receiving. Theo Riddick was a wide receiver. I think he was like a wide receiver at Notre Dame, but he's transitioned to playing a pass catching role out of the backfield in the NFL. He's a big part of Jim Bob Cooter's offense. Um, Theo Riddick is always dealing with some kind of injury last year, and he still put up those numbers. I think he missed like 3. He might have missed like 5 games or something. Um, so keep that in mind when you look at his 2016 numbers. Theo Riddick had a really solid season last year. Amir Abdullah is coming back, so Theo Riddick's rushing totals might slightly regress, but he is firmly entrenched as the pass catching back in Jim Bob Cooter's offense. And in PPR leagues, he's an RB3 with some RB2 upside. But in standard leagues, I don't see any value for him. Maybe some RB4, maybe as an RB4, but nothing really much more. Um, Currently, Riddick is being drafted as around the 30th running back. I have him somewhere around there. He's a solid option for PPR, but not for standard leagues. Yeah. Moving on, we got Golden Tate. In 2016, Golden Tate had an up and down season in which he grabbed 91 receptions for 1,077 yards and 4 TDs. Uh, his overall numbers looked solid last year, over 1,000 yards, 91 receptions. But I'm not really high on Golden Tate, and I will get to that in a little bit. Currently, Golden Tate is being drafted as around 27th. I have him around 45th. I think 27 is too high, and that's firmly based on whether Theo Riddick is healthy or not. Because if you look at his game logs, it's in the next slide. Um, Golden Tate's best offensive games were when Theo Riddick did not play, and I think, well, I don't watch tons of Lions games. I think the reasoning is that they both kind of run the underneath routes. Um, they're both really kind of the check down or the like all the screens that were going to Theo Riddick were now going to Golden Tate when Theo Riddick went down, and that was the reason why Golden Tate got a lot of yards. I really think when Theo Riddick's healthy, Golden Riddick takes a step back in the offense. And hold on, we'll get right to the next slide. Here it is. Look, on the left is Golden Tate's game log, and on the right is Theo Riddick's game log. Um, if you look at on the left, look at the first 5 weeks of the season when Theo Riddick was firmly healthy. If you can look on the right there, Theo Riddick was solid. Theo Riddick, what, 7 for 45, and then he had 5 for 63, 11 for 37, 4 for 28. And if you look down, he had a really solid first 5 weeks. Compare that to Golden Tate's first 5 weeks. 7 for 41 was his best game. He had a game where he went 1 catch for 1 yard. No, there is no value here in standard leagues. In PPR, he was maybe a wide receiver 4, maybe a wide receiver 3, but Golden Tate was really nothing special in these first 5 weeks when Theo Riddick was healthy. Then, boom, Theo Riddick goes down with an injury in week 6 and 7, and you can see Golden Tate start to awake a little bit. 8 for 165, 6 for 93. Golden Tate bounces back when Theo Riddick is out in week 8. Theo Riddick comes back, has a really big game. Golden Tate falls back down to earth, 7 for 42. Week 9, 14 for 70 for Theo Riddick. He took more of a ground role. I guess that was when Dwayne Washington went down, so he was forced to run the ball a little bit. Really didn't catch the ball as much. Golden Tate had 11 for 79. They both had to bye in week 10. Theo Riddick comes back and plays in week 11 and 12. Look, he has 2 big games. Not big for Theo Riddick, solid games for Theo Riddick, but when you look at 11-12 for Golden Tate, nothing too special. Now, in week 13, Golden Tate had a big game, albeit it was against New Orleans, who has no secondary. They're better. They should be better this year, but last year they were awful. Theo Riddick, he didn't really play I don't think he really played that much this game. He only had 5 for 15 and 4 carries for 2 yards. He probably was dealing with his ankle injury again. And after that game, as you can see, he was just shut down the rest of the season. And if you looked after that, the rest of the season, Golden Tate was back to being somewhat of a solid receiver. And so because of this, I think there is some strong correlation between Golden Tate's fantasy output and Theo Riddick's injuries, or Theo Riddick's playing time. If Theo Riddick's fully healthy again, there are way too many options in there for Golden Tate to be drafted at 27th. That's what, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 territory. That's way too high in my opinion. Eric Ebron's there. Theo Riddick, Amir Abdullah, Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, who they're trying to get more involved. I think there's way too many options there. Golden Tate is not as good as his last season would suggest. And for that reason, I have Golden Tate more around 45 rather than 27th as where he's being drafted currently. This is only wide receivers, by the way, not overall, but just wide receivers. yeah, so for that reason, I'm not huge on Golden Tate. I think Theo Riddick being there really hampers Golden Tate's potential. Moving on to Marvin Jones. I am a big fan of Marvin Jones. I think everyone who had Marvin Jones last year, I know I tried to trade for him a bunch. Everyone was, and thank God I didn't, but I think everyone was just kind of waiting and they were trying to sell. Once Marvin Jones kind of came back down to earth from his extremely hot start, I think he had a 200-yard, 2 TD game at one point. I think everyone thought he was going to be some Calvin Johnson receiver. They held on to him a little too long. And then once his value dropped a little bit, everyone tried to get him on the low, which is what I tried to do. But their owners were trying to like keep him and make sure his value restored a little before they got a lot for him in return. That never happened. So Marvin Jones had 55 receptions for 930 yards and 4 TDs. He was fantastic the first 4 weeks, slowed down a lot afterwards. Marvin Jones is currently around being drafted as a 51st wide receiver. I'm a little higher than him on that. I think he's 46th. I think Marvin Jones has big upside, and he's one of my bounce back players of the year. Really nothing statistically kind of, down like I guess comes out or glows or shows up. I don't know. Really, there's nothing really statistically here. But I just really think that they're going to find a way to incorporate this guy. Marvin Jones is not a bad player. He's a really solid wide receiver. And I think they find a way to just fit him into the offense as a deep threat. I know he was a deep threat last year, but I think they could find him to just maybe dig routes, curls. I don't know. I think they find a way to incorporate Marvin Jones into this offense, not just as a deep threat. And I think he could put up wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 type numbers. So moving on. We got Kenny Golladay. Not much to say here. This is more of those dynasty or big fantasy league players like for 15, 16, 17, 18-man leagues or 20-man leagues, which is what I plan on doing this season. That should be crazy. Or dynasty leagues. Kenny Golladay was drafted 96th overall. 6'4", 218, has nice size and speed. Currently as their number 3 wide receiver. But like I said, there's so many options there. I don't really see him being fantasy relevant this season. He might carry some appeal in dynasty leagues though. Let's get right to tight end. In 2016, Eric Ebron had the best season of his career. He held in 61 catches for 711 yards, but he only managed to score 1 TD. Ebron was dealing with some injuries, I believe, last season. With that being said, Anquan Boldin is now out of the picture, and I think Ebron could really take that step forward because Ebron's now going to be the guy that takes the end zone catches and the checkdowns for Matthew Stafford, not Anquan Boldin. I remember last season they had Anquan Boldin actually line up at tight end or in the slot instead of Eric Ebron. And Anquan Boldin would be catching those touchdowns for Matthew Stafford instead of Ebron. Anquan Boldin's now gone. Ebron's currently being drafted as the 13th tight end. I have him at 11 with potential to sneak into the top 5 fantasy tight end this season. I am really high on Eric Ebron. He's one of my favorite tight ends and based on where he's being drafted, I think he's one of my favorite tight ends. I'm not a guy, my draft philosophies, I don't really draft tight ends high. I kind of draft tight ends late because I played mostly PPR. And so for that reason, Eric Ebron is one of my favorite targets this season to draft. So final notes. I really like Amir Abdullah this season. I think he's going to go very overlooked in draft. I'm not high on Golden Tate if Theo Riddick remains healthy. I think Marvin Jones could bounce back a little bit, and I love Eric Ebron this season. That's about it for the Detroit Lion guys. If you guys have any further questions, ask me on Twitter at DFS Ultra. If you're interested in buying my lineups for MLB or NFL, pre-orders, packages are up. DM me on Twitter and leave any feedback or comments on how I should make these videos or get these out to you guys in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something new. I know when I first looked at it, that Golden Tate thing really kind of that Golden Tate thing was something that really surprised me. I thought Golden Tate had a solid season last year, but when I looked at Theo Riddick's numbers, I saw that his numbers coincided with when Theo Riddick wasn't there, so that got me thinking. So hopefully you guys learned something new. There should be another video out on the Minnesota Vikings. I'm going to stay in the NFC North. We're going to get 2 videos out a day, like I said, and that's about it. I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you guys later.